Right now, across the most heavily contested airspace on the planet, the alliance is aggressively doubling down on an aircraft that was designed when Richard Nixon was the US president. An airframe that is officially 50 years old. Some people always saying the F-16 Fighting Falcon should be in a museum. In an era dominated by stealth and advanced surface-to-air missiles, a fourth-generation, non-stealthy jet should be target practice. Yet today, the F-16 is experiencing an unbelievable tactical renaissance. European nations are frantically buying them. Lockheed Martin has entirely rebuilt its global supply chain just to keep making them. And in Eastern Europe, they are actively hunting modern drones and missiles. So how does a 50-year-old jet survive in a 2026 battlespace? Because the US defense industry figured out a way to give an old dog a terrifying new brain, that known as network-centric warfare. In the late 1970s, Belgium, Denmark, the Netherlands, and Norway didn't just buy the F-16, they built them. It became the undisputed backbone of the continent. But as enemies' air defense systems became highly lethal, we started asking an uncomfortable question. Has the Viper outlived its usefulness? The answer is no. And the reason is a piece of technology called Link 16. Link 16 is essentially the secure, jam-resistant tactical nervous system of the NATO alliance. It allows different aircraft to seamlessly share sensor data and radar tracks in real time. Here is why that is a game changer. An upgraded F-16 doesn't need stealth. If it can see through the eyes of an F-35, think of it like a sniper team. A fifth-generation F-35 acts as the ultimate stealthy spotter. It penetrates heavily defended airspace, silently acquires target data without emitting a traceable radar signature, and beams those exact coordinates back to a fleet of F-16 loitering miles away. The F-16 then act as the muscle, heavy, long-range missile trucks that fire their weapons without ever turning on their own radars. Because of this profound interconnectivity, upgrading an F-16 is a highly pragmatic choice for nations that simply cannot afford the exorbitant acquisition and maintenance costs of a fully fifth-generation Air Force. But hardware is useless without operators. And right now, the epicenter of NATO's fighter training has shifted to the eastern flank. If you buy a fleet of brand new fighter jets from the United States, your pilots typically fly to American bases, like Luke Air Force Base in Arizona, to learn how to fly them. But the geopolitics of Europe have demanded a much faster, localized solution. Enter Romania. Lockheed Martin, in tight coordination with the Dutch and Romanian governments, has established a colossal, purpose-built F-16 training pipeline right on the edge of the Black Sea. Officially operational as of 2023, the European F-16 Training Center in Romania is the only facility of its magnitude on the continent. Romania is a fascinating case study. They are relatively new operators of the Viper, having transitioned away from Soviet-era MiG-21. Instead of buying new, they opted for a highly economical route, acquiring 17 second-hand F-16 from Portugal and another 32 from Norway. Recognizing their desperate need for pilot proficiency, they offered up a sovereign air base to serve as a multinational training hub. The setup is brilliant. Lockheed Martin manages the overarching logistics and syllabus. The Royal Netherlands Air Force provided a fleet of 18 F-16, a mix of 11 single-seat fighters and 7 dual-seat trainers, to act as the schoolhouse aircraft. The instructors? Elite, battle-tested fighter pilots pulled from both US and Dutch squadrons. The standard training pipeline lasts roughly 6 intense months, but the student body is incredibly unique. You have absolute rookies who have barely flown high-performance jets, sitting in the same briefing rooms as hardened combat veterans who have thousands of hours in Soviet platforms like the Su-27 Flanker or MiG-29 Fulcrum. This presents a massive challenge. For those veterans, flying an F-16 isn't just about learning new buttons. It requires completely unlearning Soviet aerial doctrine. Soviet jets were traditionally heavily reliant on ground-controlled interception, where a commander on the ground dictates the pilot's every move. The Western F-16 doctrine is the exact opposite. It demands that the pilot be an autonomous tactician, managing a complex array of sensors and making split-second decisions in the cockpit. And the stakes at this Romanian facility couldn't be higher. A massive influx of Ukrainian pilots is currently cycling through this exact program. They don't have the luxury of a peacetime learning curve. Upon graduation, they are immediately deploying to the deadliest airspace on the planet. Because of this, the curriculum has been radically adapted. Beyond standard dogfighting, air-to-ground strike, and electronic warfare, instructors are heavily drilling these pilots on counter-UAV tactics. Hunting low, slow, and deadly kamikaze drones is now a primary mission profile for the modern European Viper. So, we know the tactical doctrine is evolving, but what is actually under the hood of these jets? Currently, there are two distinct ways a nation can acquire a state-of-the-art Viper. You can either take your old, existing F-16 and run them through a massive modernization program, a package widely known as the F-16V upgrade. Or you can cut a check to Lockheed Martin for a fighter freshly rolled off the assembly line, the F-16 Block 70 or Block 72. While we often lump both of these together under the Viper moniker, the physical realities are quite different. Let's look at the heart of the beast first, the radar. Whether you upgrade a 1990s airframe to the F-16V standard or buy a brand new Block 70, you are getting the exact same sensor. And it is an absolute game changer. Both variants are equipped with Northrop Grumman's APG-83 SABR. This is an AESA radar system. Traditional mechanically scanned radars have to physically move a dish back and forth to look for targets, meaning they can only look in one direction at a time. An AESA radar has hundreds of tiny, individual transmitter-receiver modules that steer radar beams digitally at the speed of light. The APG-83 is essentially the younger sibling of the radar found in the F-22 Raptor and shares a massive amount of its software and hardware architecture with the F-35's radar. It grants the F-16 unprecedented tracking range, the ability to engage multiple targets simultaneously, and incredible resistance to enemy electronic jamming. It is specifically optimized to look down into ground clutter and pick out tiny, low-flying cruise missiles, while also generating high-resolution synthetic aperture radar maps for precision bombing. However, an upgraded F-16V and a new Block 70 are not identical. An F-16V upgrade retains its legacy engine and its aging structural airframe. A newly minted Block 70 and 72, on the other hand, features a heavily reinforced airframe, granting it an astonishing 12,000-hour structural lifespan, meaning it can fly for decades longer than older models. Power plant-wise, a new Block 70 utilizes the General Electric F-110GE-129, while the Block 72 designates the use of the Pratt and Whitney F-100-229 engine. But the most terrifying aspect of the modern Viper is its payload capacity. Thanks to new weapon stations and integrated software, an advanced F-16 can theoretically be configured to carry an astonishing 16 AIM-120 missiles. When networked with an AWACS radar plane, this turns a lightweight, agile dogfighter into a devastating, beyond visual range missile truck. With those specs in mind, let's do a roll call of who is actually flying this jet across the European theater today. Historically, the northern European nations were the heavy lifters, but the Netherlands, Norway, and Denmark have officially decided to move on. They are fully transitioning to the F-35 stealth fighter. Consequently, their massive stockpile of heavily maintained, older F-16 is being rapidly transferred to Ukraine to bolster Kiev's air defense, while a handful are going to Croatia. Italy is also out of the F-16 game, having previously leased them as a stopgap measure. Rome now relies entirely on the Eurofighter Typhoon and the F-35. But look further south and east, and the F-16 is thriving. Turkey commands a terrifyingly large fleet of over 300 F-16. Greece fiercely guards its airspace with roughly 170. Belgium operates around 160. Poland fields 49 advanced models, Romania is pushing toward 48, Portugal maintains 45, while smaller air forces like Bulgaria and Slovakia operate around 16 and 14, respectively. The modernization efforts in this region are staggering. Because of the intense, historical geopolitical friction between Greece and Turkey in the Aegean Sea, an arms race is in full swing. Greece is currently undergoing a massive effort to upgrade over 80 of its older C and D models to the top-tier F-16V standard, with Lockheed Martin expecting to finish the job by 2027. Across the water, Turkey, despite holding out hope for a return to the F-35 program and heavily investing in its domestic stealth fighter, the Khan, has faced reality. Ankara recently secured a massive diplomatic and financial deal with Washington to purchase 79 Viper upgrade kits, plus 40 brand new Block 70 and 72 aircraft. Further north, Poland has initiated plans to push its entire fleet to the Viper standard. Meanwhile, Slovakia and Bulgaria opted to skip the upgrade line entirely and just buy brand new Block 70 jets straight from the factory. Building this many new jets and supplying the parts for hundreds of upgrades is an industrial nightmare. Since the late 1970s, General Dynamics and later Lockheed Martin have pumped out over 4,000 F-16. And remarkably, the production lines have not stopped. To keep up with the insatiable global demand, Lockheed Martin has relocated primary production to Greenville, South Carolina. But even that isn't enough. We are witnessing a massive decentralization of the U.S. defense supply chain. To alleviate production bottlenecks, highly sensitive components of the newest F-16 are now being manufactured globally. In a massive geopolitical shift, the wings for modern F-16 are now actively being built in India by Tata Advanced Systems. Let that sink in. NATO fighters patrolling European airspace will be flying on wings forged in South Asia. Meanwhile, European industry is deeply entrenched in the effort. Polish aerospace manufacturer PZL Milek is constructing the center fuselage, aft sections, and cockpits. Down in Greece, Hellenic aerospace industry is fabricating the forward fuselage and engine intakes. The F-16 has evolved from an American export into a globally integrated defense project. We've talked about the radar, the data links, and the dogfighting capabilities. But we cannot fully explain the survival of the F-16 in Europe without talking about its most secretive, terrifying mission profile. I'm talking about nuclear deterrence. During the Cold War, NATO developed a strategic framework known as nuclear sharing. Because not every NATO member has its own domestic nuclear weapons program, the United States forward deployed its own tactical nuclear arsenal across the continent. Today, it is an open secret that specialized, highly guarded vaults underneath airbases in Belgium, Germany, Italy, the Netherlands, and Turkey hold American nuclear weapons. These weapons are the B-61 series of nuclear gravity bombs. While the exact numbers and locations are highly classified and frequently shifted, we estimate that roughly 100 of these weapons remain in Europe. Currently, the stockpile mostly consists of older B-61-3 and B-61-4 variants, though the U.S. is actively rotating in the highly advanced, precision-guided B-61-12. These weapons possess a horrifying technological feature known as dial-a-yield. This means that prior to takeoff, ground crews can physically adjust the explosive power of the bomb, ranging from a fraction of a kiloton for localized tactical strikes, all the way up to city-leveling megatonnage. Crucially, these weapons remain under the strict, absolute custody of the United States military. A European nation cannot independently decide to use them. However, in the event of World War III, if a catastrophic conflict erupts and both the U.S. President and NATO High Command authorize nuclear release, these bombs will be loaded onto European fighter jets flown by European pilots. And what is the primary delivery vehicle for these weapons in Europe? Alongside the F-35 and the Strike Eagle, it is the F-16. This means the Viper is fundamentally a dual-capable aircraft. It isn't just a tactical fighter, it is a strategic nuclear bomber. But you cannot just strap a nuke to a standard jet. Aircraft designated for this mission require highly classified, specialized hardware and software modifications. They must possess secure wiring and permissive action link interfaces to establish impenetrable, encrypted communications between the jet's firing computers and the nuclear warhead. Ultimately, the F-16 resurgence is a masterclass in military economics. For the pilots and ground crews, the upgrade path is incredibly smooth. Transitioning a pilot from a 1990s Block 50 jet to a modern Block 70 does not require them to relearn how to fly the plane. They simply need to learn how to operate the new software and radar, much of which can be done in highly realistic, ground-based VR simulators, saving millions in aviation fuel and maintenance hours. Lockheed Martin states that these new F-16 variants have a structural lifespan that will keep them flying for another 30 years. That means that well into the 2050s, when the superpowers of the world might be fielding autonomous, seventh-generation hypersonic strike fighters, the F-16 will still be patrolling the skies, acting as the tip of the spear for dozens of nations. What do you think? With the APG-83 radar and a full loadout of AMRAAMs, can an upgraded F-16 actually hold its own against modern stealth fighters in a real shooting war? Drop your thoughts in the comments section below.